Greetings, my dear viewer. You're on the channel The Price of Cheating. The channel is for those who appreciate traditional family values and condemn adultery. So be sure to subscribe to the channel. Let's get started. As I walked through the door, it was immediately obvious that my wife was bubbling with excitement. She welcomed me with a bright smile and a quick kiss before hurrying back to the kitchen to finish what looked like a carefully planned dinner. "I made your favorite tonight. And guess what?" she called out, her eyes sparkling with energy. "I have the most incredible news to share." "That's fantastic, darling," I replied with a broad grin. "By the way, I've got some exciting news to share too. Maybe we can make tonight a double celebration." It was a Friday evening, marking the end of a hectic work week. While Bonnie wrapped up her preparations in the kitchen, I headed to our bedroom to change into something comfortable. The weekend lay ahead, full of promise, and I was eager for a relaxed evening filled with heartfelt conversations as we exchanged our big announcements. The idea of sharing this moment together brought a smile to my face. Allow me to introduce myself. I'm Samuel Caldwell. My wife, Bonnie, and I have been happily married for 8 years. We're both 30 years old, and while I wouldn't say I'm a model, I've been told I'm reasonably attractive. Bonnie, however, is undeniably gorgeous. She's 5'6", weighs 110 pounds, and maintains an athletic, toned physique, thanks to our regular gym sessions. Her long blonde hair and striking brown eyes turn heads wherever we go. Recently, I'd started to suspect what her big news might be. We had decided a few months ago to try for a baby. Bonnie had stopped taking birth control, and our time together in the bedroom had certainly increased. Not that we'd ever been lacking in that department. Our first year of marriage had been filled with nightly intimacy, which eventually settled into a steady rhythm of about 3 times a week. But ever since this new chapter began, our passion had reached a new peak. The only interruptions to this newfound momentum came during my occasional work trips, though those were rare. My role as a mechanical engineer generally kept me in town, working a consistent 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. schedule. Recently, I had been promoted to engineering manager, overseeing a small team of engineers and support staff. Bonnie's job as a paralegal also provided a steady routine, though she sometimes worked late during high-pressure cases. As I changed into comfortable clothes, I couldn't shake the feeling that tonight would be unforgettable. When I returned to the kitchen, Bonnie was just placing the last dish on the table. She had pulled out all the stops. It was clear she'd taken extra time to create an extraordinary evening. The meal featured chicken scallopini, Caesar salad, and garlic bread. For dessert, she'd prepared a stunning tiramisu, accompanied by 2 bottles of Merlot she had already uncorked. Bonnie herself was radiant. She wore one of her most elegant dresses, her beauty practically glowing. Everything about her, from the meal to her attire, hinted that her news was monumental. I couldn't wait to hear what she had to say. After dinner, I helped clear the table and clean up the kitchen. Once the dishes were done, we poured more wine and settled onto the couch in the living room. We teased each other about who should go first, but Bonnie's overflowing excitement made her the natural choice. Her face lit up as she finally blurted it out. "We did it, sweetheart! I'm pregnant! We're going to have a baby!" "That's incredible!" I exclaimed, unable to contain my joy. Bonnie threw her arms around me, covering my face with kisses as we celebrated the moment together. When the excitement settled, I pulled back slightly, still smiling. "I have something amazing to share too," I said, my voice brimming with anticipation. "My secretary, Eva, is also pregnant." I paused, giving Bonnie a moment to absorb what I'd said before continuing. "She's not planning to raise the baby herself, so we've decided she'll give the child to us. It'll be like they're twins. Since you and Eva are due around the same time, they'll grow up as siblings in every sense that matters, except for blood. And because I'm the father, there won't be any legal hurdles. Eva's happy to sign over custody and stay involved as a favorite aunt." I beamed at her, expecting to see shared enthusiasm on her face. Instead, her expression turned dark. Rather than the joy I'd anticipated, I was met with a storm of anger. "You cheating bastard! You had an affair with your secretary?" she yelled, her voice trembling with rage. "And you think I'd be okay raising her kids? What is wrong with you?" The evening unraveled in an instant. For the next half hour, she unleashed a torrent of furious accusations and insults, some of them so pointed and creative they left me stunned. My hopes for a joyful celebration had gone up in smoke. Still, I tried to salvage the situation. "Honey," I said gently, "why don't we go to the bedroom? After a night of passion, I'm sure we'll both feel better and be ready to celebrate the beautiful future ahead of us." Her response was swift and cutting. She rejected the suggestion outright and demanded I sleep elsewhere. When I refused to leave the bedroom, she grabbed her pillows and stormed off to the guest room. Left alone, I tried to make sense of her reaction but eventually fell asleep, convinced I'd done the right thing. The next morning, my attempts to patch things up were met with icy silence. Bonnie refused to engage, her anger still palpable. Frustrated but unwilling to let it ruin my weekend, I decided to take advantage of the sunny weather and play a round of golf. At the course, I joined a friendly group, a man, his wife, and her sister. To my surprise, the wife's sister and I hit it off immediately. Within just a few hours, our connection took an unexpected and intimate turn, if you know what I mean. When I arrived home that evening, I was caught off guard to find that my garage door opener wasn't responding. Puzzled by the unexpected failure, I swapped out the batteries, but that didn't fix the problem. Left with no other choice, I walked to the front door, only to encounter something even stranger, a row of suitcases neatly lined up on the porch. The sight was perplexing, but I shrugged it off and tried to unlock the door, only to realize my key didn't fit anymore. At first, I didn't think much of it, since I usually entered through the garage, but upon closer inspection, I noticed that the locks had been replaced, something Bonnie had never mentioned. Determined to get inside, I fetched my sawzall from the truck. Pushing aside my fatigue and confusion, I started cutting through the area around the door handle and deadbolt. Once I'd cleared the way, I made a mental note to replace the door later and stepped inside, ready to unwind after a grueling day. As soon as I crossed the threshold, Bonnie erupted in a torrent of anger. She shouted something about me needing to leave, pointing to the suitcases on the porch as evidence that my belongings were already packed. Still disoriented, I brought the suitcases back in, unpacked them, and returned everything to the bedroom. This only intensified her fury, and she began hurling accusations of infidelity. I was stunned, unsure of how to respond. Though, if I'm honest, I had an inkling. There had been Kimberly. It was a fleeting thing, or maybe not that fleeting, but it was never serious. She didn't mean anything to me. Hoping to defuse the situation, I suggested we shower together. Bonnie flatly refused. I began to wonder if her reaction stemmed from unresolved emotional issues. Maybe counseling could help, I thought. For now, I decided to let the idea simmer and focused on getting myself cleaned up. After my shower, I returned to the bedroom, only to find Bonnie hastily repacking her belongings into the same suitcases. When I asked her what she was doing, she told me bluntly that if I wasn't leaving, she would. While I'd been in the shower, she had made arrangements to stay at her sister's place. Attempting to calm her, I suggested that perhaps her pregnancy was amplifying her emotions, but she shot the idea down with a venomous retort. Despite her dismissal, I was convinced her pregnancy had something to do with it. I reassured myself that things would change after she gave birth, especially once my secretary's twins came home. Surely Bonnie would warm to the idea of motherhood and embrace raising all the children as one family. But my optimism was short-lived. An hour later, she was gone, leaving me alone and unsure of what to do next. A few days later, I made the decision to move Eva into the house. With Bonnie out of the picture and the twins on the way, it seemed like the logical step. After all, the twins were my responsibility, and Eva needed a stable environment. But my plans unraveled quickly. Just a week later, I was served with divorce papers. Bonnie wasn't just after a separation. She wanted the house, 18 years of financial maintenance, a legal directive for her demands, 90% of our savings, and $1,500 a month in child support. Worse yet, she had dredged up our prenuptial agreement, a document specifically designed to punish infidelity, and she was prepared to use it to its full extent. I knew I was in trouble. 3 months later, we met in a lawyer's office to negotiate the terms. Sitting across from Bonnie, I could see she held all the cards. The prenup was ironclad, and she had more than enough evidence to make her case. Still, I couldn't walk away without trying one last time. "Bonnie, are you absolutely sure this is what you want?" I asked, my tone steady but firm. Her response was sharp and unequivocal. "You cheated on me. You got your secretary pregnant and thought I'd be fine raising her children." Taking a deep breath, I made my final offer. "Let's stop this here and now. No divorce. We reconcile, raise all 3 kids as ours, and move forward. Eva can be involved, but only as their favorite aunt. You'll be their mother, and I'll be their father. Maybe we'll even have more kids in the future. The choice is yours, yes or no." Her answer was blistering. "There's no way I'm raising any kids with that woman," she said, her anger unrelenting. I glanced at my lawyer, Agatha, who was known for her ferocity in court. With a calm but deliberate motion, she opened her briefcase. "Since your client has rejected my client's generous offer, here's our counterproposal," she said, sliding a document across the table. It didn't take long for Bonnie and her lawyer to read it, their faces transforming from smug confidence to alarm. Agatha wasn't finished. "We're also filing a motion for DNA testing of Bonnie's pregnancy and pursuing legal action against Victor Conway for child support," she announced. Bonnie's complexion drained as Agatha hit play on an audio recording. Victor's voice rang out, unmistakable. "So how do you know it's mine and not your husband's?" Bonnie's reply was chilling. "You look enough like him that he'll never question it. He'll think it's his kid and raise it for us. We'll tell the truth when the time comes, but until then, it's not his problem." Agatha slid another document across the table, a motion to sue Victor for $2,000 a month in child support. Bonnie's lawyer fumbled, clearly blindsided. Leaning in, Agatha delivered the final blow. "Here's the updated proposal. The divorce is off the table. Both parties will sign a post-nuptial agreement and remain married until all children have graduated high school. If Bonnie refuses, we'll proceed with the lawsuit against Victor, DNA testing, and full public exposure of their affair." Bonnie's composure crumbled. She had made her move, but Agatha had outmaneuvered her at every turn. When both parties are in agreement, they can opt to continue their marriage under new, mutually accepted terms. The revised post-nuptial agreement will incorporate elements of the original prenuptial arrangement while introducing significant changes. The most notable of these adjustments is the transition to an open marriage, granting my client the freedom to pursue other relationships, provided he informs his wife beforehand. This liberty would also extend to her. Any future children born during their marriage will remain the shared responsibility of the couple. However, Agatha clarified that in cases of unintended pregnancies, whether carried to term or not, the stipulations outlined in the postnuptial agreement will still apply. As she made this declaration, I saw Bonnie's face pale with shock as her infidelity was brought into full view. Agatha's expression sharpened, her smile turning predatory as she continued. "If your client refuses this offer, we are fully prepared to enforce the terms of the prenuptial agreement," she asserted. "Her affair predates my client's actions by nearly 3 years. In reality, my client's own affair only began after he had meticulously gathered evidence of her betrayal, including her intent to have another man's child. If she chooses divorce, she must be ready to face financial ruin, the loss of her home, and a life stripped of security. Furthermore, her social circle will be presented with indisputable proof of her infidelity, including video recordings of her extramarital relationship. We are prepared to guarantee her total humiliation and downfall." Turning to me, Bonnie's eyes implored me to respond. "Bonnie," I began, "you intended for me to unknowingly raise a child fathered by another man. While the baby you carry is innocent, I cannot bear the consequences of your actions alone. However, I am willing to accept the child as a stepchild, on the condition that your lover assumes full financial responsibility. He will be required to cover child support, health insurance, medical bills, and educational expenses. Should he wish for visitation, it will be allowed, though I doubt he'll pursue it." I continued, "In addition, he must fund the child's college education. This is the price of his decisions. Though he may have claimed he didn't want children, he will now shoulder the obligations of fatherhood. As for you, Your atonement for this betrayal will be to raise my biological children as your own. In every aspect but biology, they will be your responsibility." I paused for effect before adding, "Only those of us in this room, and Eva, will know the full truth. You found it amusing to consider having me unknowingly raise another man's child. Now you will experience the irony of raising another woman's children. Furthermore, you will welcome Eva into our home whenever she wishes to visit the children. That is the burden you must carry." With a steady tone, I concluded, "You dare contemplate divorce over my infidelity when you have engaged in an affair for years. That is hypocrisy. My affair only began after I uncovered your betrayal and your plans to conceive another man's child. Eva agreed to bear my children on the condition that she would not raise them alone." 18 years later, Diana's voice trembled as she asked, "So Aunt Eva is really—" Before I could respond, Laura interrupted, "And what about Uncle Matt?" "Yes," I answered. "Eva had twins. Diana was born just before Laura, and Donnie, Bonnie's son, arrived 3 days earlier. When we introduced the triplets to our family and friends, there were plenty of surprised faces. Questions arose about Diana and Laura's red hair, but recessive genes offered a convenient explanation. I clarified further. Uncle Matt came into Eva's life later. When she became pregnant, Eva was single and decided it was best for you two to be raised by a married couple. Since we were close friends, I agreed to adopt you both. By the time Eva married Matt, it was too late to change that arrangement." Taking a deep breath, I said, "Now that you know the truth, understand this. Your mom and I love you as if you were our biological children. That has never changed, and it never will. Though your aunt and uncle have their own family now, you will always hold a special place in their hearts. We are one family, and nothing can alter that." I wondered if they would fully grasp the complexity of what I had just shared. Perhaps they would, perhaps not. While there were strong reasons to keep this secret, we ultimately chose honesty. We also told Donnie that I was not his biological father. That conversation was different. Donnie never met the man who fathered him, a rogue who tried to contest paternity but was overruled by DNA evidence. Though he initially evaded child support, legal enforcement ensured his compliance. Court orders aren't taken lightly by law enforcement. During the period of our open marriage, I had a few encounters with both Kimberly and Eva. My relationship with Eva ended when she met Matt, and I refrained from pursuing others after that. To my knowledge, Bonnie remained faithful, though I was watchful. Following Eva's departure, I made it clear that I would tolerate no further betrayal. Bonnie seemed to understand and worked to rebuild our reliance on one another. Victor Conway, Donnie's biological father, vanished shortly after Samuel turned 18. Although he had established a college fund for Donnie, he showed no interest in visiting him. Rumors suggested he relocated to the East Coast, though a more credible source placed him closer, just a few miles away. Regardless, I ensured he fulfilled his financial responsibilities, though visitation rights remained unused. 19 years have passed since that turbulent chapter of our lives. Extensive investigations uncovered no evidence of further infidelity. Over time, Bonnie became a devoted wife and mother. As our children prepare to leave the nest, I find myself contemplating early retirement. Some may view my forgiveness as weakness, but vengeance would have achieved nothing of value. Eva and I might have had a future together, but that possibility is irrelevant now. What truly matters is that I avoided the humiliation of unknowingly raising another man's child. While I acted as a father figure to Donnie, it was with the understanding that Victor funded his upbringing. My role was to ensure he grew into a man of integrity. By remaining with Bonnie, I provided our children with a stable home and both parents, a gift I would not trade for anyone else's judgment. A decade has passed since then, and these are my reflections. Infidelity is a destructive force, leaving deep and lasting scars even for those who bear no fault. My affair with Kimberly and the exposure of Bonnie's betrayal nearly shattered our marriage. In hindsight, I see the selfishness of my actions and the pain they inflicted on my family. While Bonnie's betrayal was significant, today I reflect on my own failings. Her forgiveness and our eventual reconciliation were hard-earned. It required years of effort and moments of doubt to rebuild our relationship, but the outcome has been worth it. Our children have grown into remarkable individuals, and witnessing their success fills me with pride and peace. I hope they learn from my mistakes. May they honor their commitments, value honesty, and cherish their partners. For my part, I am grateful for the chance to atone for my past, embrace the present, and hold dear the love that endured. Though the wounds of my missteps will never fully heal, I find comfort in knowing that redemption is achievable and that love can triumph over even the gravest of sins. This concludes the story. If you like it, then put your powerful like and subscribe to the channel. Greetings, my dear viewer. You're on the channel The Price of Cheating. The channel is for those who appreciate traditional family values and condemn adultery. So be sure to subscribe to the channel. Let's get started. It was supposed to be an easygoing night, a break from the monotony of our daily routine. The kind of night where you leave your worries behind, loosen up, and just enjoy yourself. I never expected that evening to take such a sharp turn, to burn itself into my memory forever. My name is Nigel. Abigail and I had been married for 6 years, and I always believed we were on solid ground. Like any couple, we had our share of disagreements, but I never thought she was capable of betraying me. That Halloween night proved me wrong. Truth has a cruel way of sneaking up on you when you least expect it. For weeks, Abigail had been looking forward to the party. She marked the date on our calendar and brought it up every chance she got. Her friend from yoga, Lauren, was the host. Lauren was famous for her elaborate Halloween parties, the kind that turned her house into a chaotic, overpacked, haunted attraction, complete with fog machines, creepy soundtracks, and far too many guests squeezed into the space. "Are you ready yet?" Abigail's voice called from the bedroom as I wrestled with the fraying laces on my pirate boots. My costume was far from impressive, a generic pirate outfit with a plastic sword dangling at my hip and an eye patch that barely stayed on. "Almost. How's your outfit?" I yelled back. "Just finishing up," she chirped. When she finally appeared, I could hardly speak. Abigail was dressed as a vampire queen, and her costume left little room for imagination. The tight black corset emphasized every curve, while the leather skirt climbed dangerously high up her thighs. Her dark makeup gave her an air of mystery, sharp, bold, and undeniably alluring. "Wow," I managed to say, my tone trapped somewhere between admiration and discomfort. "You look amazing." She smiled, spinning on her heel with a playful glint in her eyes. "Is it too much?" I wanted to tell her yes, that it was too much, and I didn't feel right about her walking into a room full of strangers dressed like that. But I held back. I didn't want to seem controlling. "No," I said instead, forcing a smile. "You look fantastic." By the time we arrived, the party was already roaring. Music pulsed through the house, mingling with the overwhelming scent of alcohol and pumpkin spice candles. Costumed guests swarmed every corner of the space, shouting over each other and dancing like there was no tomorrow. Lauren greeted us at the door, her tattered zombie bride attire made all the more convincing by smudged makeup and a torn veil. "Abigail! Nigel, you made it!" she beamed, pulling Abigail in for a hug. Her gaze darted to Abigail's outfit, and a sly grin crept across her face. "Girl, you're going to be the star of the show tonight." Abigail laughed. "Oh, stop it." I smiled faintly and stuck close to Abigail as we navigated through the crowded house. The party was wild. Music blared, drinks flowed freely, and people shouted and laughed without a care. Abigail seemed to know everyone, flitting from one conversation to the next with ease. As the hours passed, I noticed how much she was drinking and how far she was drifting from me. Her laughter got louder, her hand lingered on others' arms longer than it should have, and her movements had that loose, uninhibited quality that came with too many cocktails. At some point, I lost her completely. A knot of unease tightened in my stomach as I searched through the house. "Lauren, have you seen Abigail?" I asked when I finally spotted her near the drinks table. Lauren glanced up and shrugged. "Relax, Nigel. She's just mingling. Let her enjoy herself." Her dismissive tone stung, but I didn't argue. Eventually, I found Abigail on the back patio, talking to a guy in a werewolf costume. He was tall, built like an athlete, and carried himself with the cocky assurance that rubbed me the wrong way. "There you are," I said, walking up to them. Abigail turned, her smile overly bright. "Oh, hey, Nigel, meet Tyler. He works with Lauren." "Nice to meet you," I said. My voice clipped as I extended my hand. Tyler's grip was firm, and the smirk that accompanied it didn't sit right with me. "Tyler was just telling me about a haunted house he went to last week," Abigail explained casually. "Fascinating," I replied flatly, struggling to keep my irritation in check. Abigail gave me a quick glance, her smile faltering slightly. "You okay?" "Yeah," I said, my tone betraying me. "Just ready to head back inside." She hesitated but eventually followed. For the next hour, Abigail stayed close, but something was off. It felt like she was there physically, but mentally, she was somewhere else. Around midnight, Lauren announced a game of truth or dare. I wasn't thrilled, but Abigail's excitement persuaded me to join in. The game quickly escalated. Shots were taken, secrets were spilled, and people were dared to do increasingly ridiculous things. When it was Abigail's turn, Lauren shot her a mischievous look. "Truth or dare?" Lauren asked. Abigail smiled confidently. "Dare!" Lauren's grin widened. "I dare you to kiss the most attractive person here." Cheers and whistles erupted around the circle. My stomach dropped as I watched Abigail's face. For a moment she glanced at me, and I thought she'd lean over and kiss me, ending the whole thing with a laugh. Instead, she turned to Tyler. Before I could process what was happening, she leaned in and kissed him. It wasn't quick. It wasn't innocent. It was deliberate, slow, and far too intimate. The crowd roared with applause, but I sat frozen, my mind spinning. When Abigail pulled back, her eyes met mine, and I couldn't read her expression. "Nigel, it was just a game," she said softly, as though that would fix everything. I forced out a hollow laugh and muttered something about getting some air. I pushed my way outside, the cold air biting at my skin as anger, confusion, and humiliation crashed over me. Minutes later, Abigail appeared. "Are you okay?" she asked cautiously. "No, I'm not okay," I snapped. "What the hell was that?" "It was just a dare," she defended herself. "Everyone was watching. I didn't want to make it awkward." "Well, you nailed it. Things are definitely awkward now," I shot back. She reached for my hand, but I pulled away. "You kissed another guy in front of everyone, Abigail." "It didn't mean anything," she insisted, her voice rising. Before I could respond, Tyler appeared in the doorway, feigning concern. "Everything good out here?" "No, it's not," I said sharply, stepping toward him. "Mind your own damn business." "Nigel, stop!" Abigail said, stepping between us. Tyler raised his hands innocently. "Didn't mean to intrude." He retreated, leaving me glaring at Abigail. "This is unbelievable," I muttered. "You're overreacting," she shot back. "It's a party, Nigel. You're just being jealous." "I'm going home," I said, my voice hard. Her eyes widened. "What? Why?" "Because I'm done pretending this is okay," I said bitterly. "You're being ridiculous," she protested. "It was just a stupid game." But I didn't care anymore. I turned and walked away, leaving her standing there alone on the porch, still trying to justify the unjustifiable. "Go get your bag," I ordered, my voice sharp, my hand gesturing toward the car. "We're leaving. Right now." Abigail didn't budge. Her stance was firm, her expression unyielding. "No, I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying here." My voice dropped, low and dangerous. "Abigail, if you don't come home with me this instant, we're finished." Her eyes narrowed, defiance flickering in their depths as she tilted her chin upward. "You don't own me, Nigel. If you want to leave, then leave. I'm staying." I stared at her, the weight of her words settling like a stone in my chest. "So this is it? You're choosing this party, choosing him, over us, over our marriage?" She said nothing. That silence cut me more deeply than anything she could have said. My voice turned to ice. "Fine, have it your way." Without another word, I turned and walked off the porch, my feet heavy as I approached my car. I slid into the driver's seat, my hands trembling on the wheel as a torrent of emotions swirled inside me. Fury, betrayal, heartbreak. The entire drive home was a blur. Hours later, I found myself sitting alone in the living room. The house felt suffocatingly still, a silence that seemed to mock me as I tried to process what had happened. The buzz of my phone snapped me out of my thoughts. An unfamiliar number lit up the screen. After a pause, I answered, "Hello? Hey, Nigel. It's Brad, Lauren's boyfriend. We met earlier tonight." His voice was uncertain, awkward. "Yeah?" I replied warily, not understanding why he was calling me. Brad exhaled audibly as if bracing himself. "Look, man, I don't know how to say this, but you need to know. Abigail's upstairs, with Tyler, in one of the bedrooms." The world seemed to tilt beneath me. My stomach dropped, and I could barely force out the words. "Are you sure?" But deep down, I already knew the answer. "Yeah, I'm sorry, Nigel. You deserve to know." I hung up without responding, my hand trembling as I placed the phone back on the table. My eyes landed on the framed wedding photo across the room, our smiling faces frozen in time. Something in me snapped. I grabbed the frame and hurled it against the wall. The sound of shattering glass filled the room, but it wasn't enough to drown out the pain. Moving on instinct, I walked to the closet and pulled out the folder that held our marriage papers, a relic of promises and vows that now meant nothing. One by one, I ripped through them, tearing our life together into pieces. The quiet of the house became unbearable, pressing down on me like a weight. I grabbed a bag, stuffed it with clothes, and left. I couldn't be there. The hotel I checked into felt sterile, cold, but at least it wasn't haunted by memories of her. At the small desk in the corner of the room, I opened my laptop, logged into our shared bank account, and transferred every dollar into my personal account. She had no right to a single cent after what she'd done. Sleep refused to come that night. I lay on the stiff mattress, my mind replaying everything again and again. Anger, disbelief, grief, a relentless cycle that wouldn't stop turning. By morning, my phone began buzzing nonstop. Abigail. I ignored the calls at first, but eventually, I picked up. "What?" My voice was hollow. "Nigel, where are you?" Her voice was frantic, desperate. "I woke up and you were gone. What's happening?" A bitter laugh escaped me. "You're really asking that? You stayed at the party. I told you what it meant if you did. And then you went upstairs. With Tyler." There was silence on the other end before she finally spoke, her voice small. "Who told you?" "Does it matter?" I shot back coldly. "The truth is the truth." "Nigel, please," she whispered. "I made a mistake. I love you. We can fix this." "No," I replied, the finality in my tone undeniable. "You destroyed everything, Abigail. Now you have to live with it." I ended the call before she could say another word. Days later, I returned to the house to collect more of my belongings. It no longer felt like mine, just a hollow, empty place that echoed with betrayal. As I pulled into the driveway, I noticed a car I didn't recognize parked outside. My gut twisted. Inside, the unmistakable sounds coming from the bedroom sent dread crawling up my spine. My feet were heavy as I climbed the stairs, dread turning to certainty. I pushed the door open. There they were, Abigail and Tyler, tangled together in the bed we used to share. "What the hell is this?" My voice shook with anger, disbelief raw in every word. Abigail froze, her face paling. "Nigel, I didn't mean for you to see this." My hands trembled, my vision narrowing as rage surged through me. "This is what you call a mistake? This is your regret?" Tyler scrambled to cover himself, but I ignored him. I pulled out my phone and snapped photos of the scene, proof of her betrayal, cold and irrefutable. "You have 2 days," I said, my voice icy. 2 days to get your things and get out. If you're still here, I'll have the police remove you. You won't disrespect me in my own home." Abigail stared at me, guilt and disbelief etched across her face. But I was done. Whatever part of me had loved her, had trusted her, was gone. "If I need to file a restraining order, I will," I added sharply before turning on my heel and walking out, leaving her and Tyler behind. The divorce was quick, but the pain lingered. Abigail packed her things and left, taking only what belonged to her, but leaving behind the wreckage of our life. I erased every trace of her from my world, every photo, every memory. Time moved forward, but some wounds don't heal. They scar. Her betrayal taught me a truth I'd never forget. Love alone isn't enough. Without trust, loyalty, and respect, love is just an illusion. Every Halloween, I remember the night my world crumbled. But it's also the night I found the strength to walk away from someone who never deserved me. And for that, I'll always be grateful. This concludes the story. If you like it, then put your powerful like and subscribe to the channel. Greetings, my dear viewer. You're on the channel The Price of Cheating. The channel is for those who appreciate traditional family values and condemn adultery. So be sure to subscribe to the channel. Let's get started. The moment everything fell apart is still etched in my mind, vivid and unshakable. It was supposed to be a celebration, our third wedding anniversary, a night meant to be filled with love, joy, and a renewed connection. In the weeks leading up to it, Jenny had been more attentive than usual, as if she were trying to repair the widening gap between us. She insisted on planning the entire evening herself, claiming it was her way of bringing us back together. For a brief moment, I let myself believe her. I dared to hope that maybe, just maybe, we could reclaim what we'd lost. The night began perfectly. The house hummed with laughter and the gentle clinking of glasses as friends and family gathered to celebrate. Even Jenny's parents, never ones to hide their disapproval of me, were unusually pleasant. Jenny herself looked radiant in her dress, floating through the room with a smile so effortless it almost convinced me everything was fine. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to believe we might be okay. Then Louis arrived, her boss, a man I'd never met. The moment he walked in, something shifted. Jenny's entire demeanor changed. Her face lit up in a way that made my stomach churn. Without a second thought, she left my side to greet him, and the hug she gave him lingered just a little too long, far too intimate to be professional. It felt off. I tried to push the feeling away, telling myself I was being paranoid. Maybe it was nothing. But as the evening went on, it became harder to ignore. Time after time, I caught her drifting toward Louis, laughing too eagerly at his jokes, standing too close, whispering in hushed tones that shut out the rest of the room. Everywhere I turned, there they were, locked in a private world where I didn't belong. It was my anniversary party, yet I felt like an outsider. Then came the speech. Jenny tapped her glass, her smile brilliant as she drew everyone's attention. She began with gratitude, thanking our guests for coming and sharing sweet memories of our marriage. Her words felt sincere, and for a moment I thought she was about to say something meaningful about us, about our love. But her tone changed. Suddenly she started talking about children, about how she had longed to start a family, but I had resisted. My chest tightened. She was revealing our most private struggles in front of everyone, stripping me bare for them to judge. She painted me as selfish, someone who cared more about independence and ambition than her dreams of motherhood. I could feel every gaze turn to me, their silent judgment cutting through me like a blade. I wanted to interrupt, to defend myself, but Jenny wouldn't let me. She waved me off as if I were invisible. Her words grew sharper, her tone more deliberate. And then she dropped the final blow. She brought up Louis. She said he had been her source of comfort, someone who understood her in ways she never thought possible. Her exact words burned into my memory. Louis understands me in ways I never thought possible. I froze. My mind couldn't keep up with what I was hearing. The room went silent, except for her voice, still ringing with clarity. She spoke of feeling unloved and unappreciated, but all I could hear was her admiration for him, for another man. Right there in front of me, in front of everyone we knew. Our friends, our families. All of them sat there, taking it in, while I stood motionless. It felt like the ground had disappeared beneath my feet. Anger, humiliation, and betrayal surged through me all at once, but I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. I couldn't even breathe. The silence in the room was suffocating. No one said a word. They just watched, waiting for me to react. My stillness only seemed to confirm everything she had said. Then, with a cruel, final flourish, Jenny ended her speech. She raised her glass, her voice bright and resolute. and declared that she was done fighting for a marriage that no longer served her. I don't even remember what she toasted to. I only remember standing there, frozen, staring at her as my mind spun, unable to make sense of it. I wanted to scream, to tell everyone the truth about our marriage, but nothing came out. My body refused to move, my voice refused to rise. I stood paralyzed, crushed under the weight of it all. That night changed everything, not just between Jenny and me, but deep within myself. I realized then that nothing would ever be the same again. To understand how it all unraveled, you have to know about her family. From the very beginning, they were a looming presence judging my every move. Her parents, both successful doctors, came from a world of privilege I could never hope to match. Her brothers were no different. One an accomplished lawyer, the other a promising entrepreneur. Jenny was raised in an environment where success wasn't just celebrated, it was mandatory. When we first started dating, she warned me about their elitist attitudes and told me not to take their coldness to heart. At first, I didn't. Their disapproval was subtle, backhanded compliments, polite smiles that barely concealed disdain, and comments that always seemed to diminish me. I brushed it off, determined to prove them wrong. I told myself their opinions didn't matter. But no matter what I did, I was never good enough for them. It became clear over time that they didn't think I deserved Jenny. I came from a modest background, raised by a single mother who taught me the value of hard work and resilience. What I saw as strength, they viewed as a shortcoming, a flaw that made me unworthy of their daughter. Things only got worse when the subject of children came up. For Jenny's parents, it was a given. We were married, so we should start a family. Every visit turned into an interrogation. When will we hear the sound of little feet? Jenny's not getting any younger, you know. They even offered to help financially, as if money were the only thing holding us back. Jenny sided with them. She repeated their arguments, insisting we could lean on her parents for support. But that was the problem for me. I didn't want their help. I wanted to build a secure future for us on my own terms. Accepting their money felt like surrendering even more control to them, and I couldn't do it. Their offers didn't feel like kindness. They felt like accusations, constant reminders of my inadequacy. Jenny called me stubborn, accusing me of letting my pride get in the way. But she couldn't see how much it hurt, how their words chipped away at me, leaving me feeling small and worthless. The digs only grew sharper. I'll never forget the day Jenny's mother looked me in the eye and said, "Jenny deserves someone who can meet her needs without hesitation." Her father followed up, as if on cue. Men in our family always rise to the occasion. Their words cut deep, but I kept quiet. I didn't want to make things worse. Yet over time, the weight of their judgment became impossible to ignore. Every dinner with them felt like an exam I was destined to fail. And Jenny? She laughed along with their remarks, dismissing them as harmless jokes. When I tried to explain how much it hurt, she brushed it off, telling me I was overreacting. The hardest part was the double standard. When Jenny met my family, I welcomed her with open arms. We didn't have wealth or titles, but we had love, and that had always been enough for me. For her, though, it never seemed to be enough. My mother embraced Jenny as if she were the daughter she had always longed for, and my brothers treated her like family from day one. But the acceptance never flowed in the other direction. From the moment I met her family, I felt like a stranger, evaluated, compared, and inevitably found lacking. Their silent judgments crept into our marriage like an unseen splinter, subtle but ever present, slowly driving us apart. Their constant, unspoken expectations of conformity, of children, of earning their approval, became an unbearable weight I couldn't shake, no matter how hard I tried. In hindsight, I realized those fractures were there from the start. The troubles between Jenny and me were never just ours to solve. They were intertwined with her family's demands and her unwillingness to push back against them. Our marriage didn't collapse in one explosive moment. It wore down slowly, layer by layer, until the damage was too severe to ignore. The problems began subtly, small enough to overlook at first, but they grew. Instead of confronting those early cracks, we let them deepen. We became masters of avoidance, patching things up with quick apologies, sweeping disagreements under the rug and pretending we were fine. But under the surface, we were anything but fine. One of the first clear signs was how differently we coped with stress. Our reactions to conflict couldn't have been more opposite. I needed space to reflect, to gather my thoughts before responding. Jenny, on the other hand, led with her emotions, reacting in the moment without hesitation. It often felt like we were speaking entirely different languages, especially when it came to her family. I saw them as distant, dismissive, and at times downright condescending. I tried to tell her how it made me feel, but she brushed me off every time. "You're overreacting," she'd say, or, "You're imagining things." No matter how blatant their behavior, Jenny defended them. I'll never forget the day her mother told me, "You should consider yourself lucky Jenny married you." When I brought it up, expecting support, Jenny just laughed. "That's just who they are," she said, as if that made it okay. But it wasn't only her family. Our differences ran much deeper. Jenny grew up in a world where money solved everything and status meant something. I was raised to believe in hard work, independence, and self-reliance. My mother had taught me to value every dollar, to stand on my own feet, and I wanted that kind of life for us. I dreamed of building something together, something ours, untouched by her parents' influence. Jenny didn't see it that way. She saw my refusal to accept her family's money as stubborn pride, as if I were sabotaging our marriage on purpose. I tried to explain again and again that it wasn't about pride, it was about dignity and equality. I wanted to be her partner, not a charity case. But no matter how I phrased it, she couldn't or wouldn't understand. Our struggles went beyond finances or family. Even our daily rhythms clashed. I cherished the quiet moments, nights spent cooking together, watching a movie, or simply being in each other's company. Jenny thrived on energy and excitement, craving parties, friends, and a full calendar. Early in our relationship, her vibrance had been magnetic, but over time, it left me drained. I didn't want to go out every weekend, and she resented me for it. What once drew us together became a source of resentment. Then came the arguments about children. I wanted kids too, but I believed we needed to wait until we were on stable ground, emotionally and financially. It seemed practical to me, build a strong foundation first. But to Jenny, my hesitation was selfish. She saw it as me holding her back, putting my priorities above hers. "If you really loved me, you'd understand how much this means to me," she'd say. The words cut deeply because I did love her. But I also knew that children wouldn't heal the fractures between us. They'd only make them worse. The same arguments played on repeat, becoming more toxic with each cycle. We'd fight, reconcile, and fight again. Jenny began to call me cold and unfeeling, labels that hurt me more than she realized. In response, I withdrew further, convinced that silence would keep the peace. To Jenny, though, my quiet only proved I didn't care. Her insistence on confronting every problem left me exhausted, while my attempts to avoid conflict left her feeling abandoned. Still, I held on. I told myself that every marriage requires effort, that this was just a rough patch. But deep down, I knew I was the only one trying. I bent, I compromised, I gave everything I could. But Jenny wouldn't budge. It was always her way or nothing. By the time her family's anniversary party arrived, our relationship was little more than a performance. We shared the same home, but lived separate lives, our love buried beneath resentment and fatigue. That night, everything unraveled. When Jenny stood up to give her speech, the entire room seemed to freeze. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. Her words were a deliberate betrayal, public, humiliating, and final. I felt every eye in the room turn toward me, waiting for a reaction I couldn't give. I was numb. Then something I never expected happened. Jenny's father, the same man who had spent years treating me like I didn't belong, stood up. I braced myself, assuming he'd smooth things over or excuse her behavior. But his voice cut through the silence like a blade. "This is disgusting, Jenny," he said, fury in his tone. "What were you thinking doing this here?" The room grew impossibly still. Jenny's mother sat frozen, her face pale with shock and shame. Jenny, so full of confidence moments earlier, faltered. She muttered something about being honest, but her father wasn't having it. Honest? He snapped. This isn't honesty. It's cruel. It's unacceptable. I stared at him, stunned. This was the man who had always looked down on me, yet here he was, furious with his own daughter. In his eyes, I glimpsed something unexpected, regret, maybe even guilt, for how far things had spiraled. Her mother followed him out of the room in silence, her expression stricken. Jenny's brothers exchanged uneasy glances until one of them, Nicholas, finally spoke up. "This isn't okay, Jenny," he said quietly, his voice heavy with disappointment. "You need to take responsibility for this." Jenny's mask crumbled. She glanced around the room, desperate for someone to defend her, but no one did. Even her closest friends avoided her gaze, their discomfort clear. One by one, people began to leave. In that moment, the weight of everything came crashing down on me. The silence, the shame, the finality of what had just happened. I understood then that there was no coming back from this. The room, once a vibrant hub of joy and laughter, fell into an uneasy silence as though the air itself had thickened with discomfort. Glasses, half full and forgotten, littered the tables, while untouched plates of food hinted at the abrupt unraveling of the evening. It seemed as though everyone present had silently agreed that staying a moment longer would be unbearable. Within minutes, the crowd thinned, leaving behind a hollow emptiness that swallowed every trace of the celebration. I stood frozen in place, watching the evening I had painstakingly orchestrated crumble before my eyes. Jenny, who had so boldly commanded attention earlier, now stood exposed and disoriented, stripped of the confidence that had carried her through the night. The poise she had carefully cultivated had evaporated, replaced by a palpable fear that betrayed her lack of foresight. For all her scheming, she clearly hadn't considered the fallout. Her parents' biting words still lingered in the charged air, their harshness cutting through the silence like shards of glass. Jenny stood motionless in the center of the room, her defiance gone, her gaze imploring me for something I couldn't offer, a reprieve I wasn't willing to give. When her eyes finally found mine, they held none of the cold superiority I'd come to expect. Instead, I saw desperation, a silent plea for understanding or forgiveness. I wanted to feel triumphant, to savor the poetic justice of her plan backfiring so spectacularly. But no such satisfaction came. All I felt was a hollow ache. Watching her unravel did nothing to erase the humiliation she had inflicted on me. The damage was done, and no apology or remorse could ever repair it. With a calm I barely recognized as my own, I finally broke the silence. "Pack your things," I said, my voice steady and emotionless. "I want you out of the house tonight." Her eyes widened, shock and disbelief breaking through her composure. "Wait, can we talk about this?" she stammered, her voice trembling as panic took hold. But I shook my head, unyielding. "There's nothing left to say," I replied firmly. "You made your choice, Jenny. Now you have to live with it." Louis, who had been lingering uncomfortably on the sidelines, stepped forward to guide her away. The sight of him placing a hand gently on her back and her leaning into his touch wounded me more deeply than I thought possible. I turned my back on them, unable to watch their retreat. The door clicked shut behind them, and the house suddenly felt cavernous, its emptiness echoing the hollowness inside me. My mother and younger brother lingered nearby, reluctant to leave me alone in the aftermath. The silence between us was suffocating, heavy with the weight of all that had transpired. It wasn't just the betrayal that gnawed at me, it was the finality of it all. That night, the foundation I'd built my life on, my marriage, my trust in Jenny, and even my understanding of myself, shattered beyond repair. In the days that followed, I moved through life in a fog, struggling to process the wreckage. The house, once a home, had become an empty shell, every room a reminder of what I had lost. My mom stayed for a while, offering support and company, but the quiet moments were the hardest to bear. In those silences, the weight of everything unsaid seemed louder than ever. I refused to contact Jenny. To me, that chapter was closed, or at least I desperately wanted it to be. 2 days later, My phone buzzed with a message from her. My first instinct was to delete it, to pretend it hadn't happened. What could she possibly say that would make any difference? But something, curiosity, or maybe some deeper, unspoken feeling, compelled me to open it. The message was long and rambling, overflowing with regret. Jenny claimed she had made a terrible mistake, that her actions were never meant to hurt me the way they did. Attached to the message was a screenshot of her resignation letter, as though quitting her job could somehow undo the damage. In the days that followed, the messages continued. Apologies, explanations, promises to change, all poured into my phone. She confessed to ending things with Louis and said she was crashing at a friend's place. The speech, she explained, had been a misguided attempt to grab my attention, to make me realize how unhappy she'd been. She admitted she had been wrong, but insisted her actions stemmed from pain rather than malice. I couldn't bring myself to respond. Her words felt empty, desperate attempts to rebuild something that had already crumbled to dust. Even if her relationship with Louis had been purely emotional, how could I ever trust her again? How could I erase the memory of that night, of her standing before everyone, dismantling our marriage with effortless cruelty? But Jenny wasn't ready to give up. After several days of silence, she took it a step further. Early one morning, the intercom buzzed as I prepared to leave for work. Seeing her disheveled and anxious on the screen reignited a fury I thought I had buried. My first instinct was to tell her to leave and never return. "I have a right to be here," she said through the intercom, her voice defiant. She reminded me she had contributed to the rent that month. Technically, she wasn't wrong. Against my better judgment, I let her in. The moment she stepped through the door, the facade shattered. Tears streamed down her face as her emotions poured out in a chaotic rush of anger, sorrow, and desperation. "How could you say those things about me?" she demanded, referring to a single cutting message I had sent her. "You made me sound like a monster." I held her gaze, my voice steady. "Do you even understand what you did?" I asked. "You stood there and humiliated me in front of everyone. You made me feel like I was nothing to you. You broke everything." She rattled off excuses, blaming my emotional distance and claiming it had pushed her to the edge. "I just wanted you to see how much I was hurting," she whispered, her voice trembling as though it justified her betrayal. I let her speak, but with every word I became more certain. Nothing she said could change what had happened. "You talk about your pain," I said finally, my frustration rising. "But did you ever think about me? Do you know what it felt like to stand there while you praised another man? To hear you say our marriage was a waste?" Her face contorted, anger flickering beneath her tears. "I gave up my career for you," she snapped. "I've been trying to fix this, and all you've done is shut me out." "This isn't about your career, Jenny," I said, shaking my head. "It's about trust, and you destroyed it. I don't know if I even want to fix that." Her anger spilled over. "You'll regret this," she shot back, her voice breaking. "One day you'll realize you lost the best thing that ever happened to you." I didn't argue. I was too exhausted. Instead, I opened the door. "It's time to go." She stormed out, slamming the door behind her. That was the end, or so I thought. Months later, after filing for divorce, the strongest emotion I felt was relief. The process unfolded faster than expected. Jenny briefly pushed for spousal support, citing the sacrifices she'd made for me. But when I made it clear I'd bring the events of that night into court, she dropped it. I think the fear of public embarrassment was enough to silence her demands. When the divorce was finalized, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: peace. The house that had been suffocating with tension became a place of quiet solace. My mom stayed with me through the transition, but eventually I asked her to go. It was time for me to face this new chapter on my own. She accepted the situation, leaving with a promise to keep in touch and visit frequently. In the months that followed, I threw myself headfirst into work. It wasn't just a way to stay busy. It became a refuge. My job took on a significance I hadn't felt in years, and I devoted myself to it with an intensity I didn't realize I still had. The long hours were less about avoidance and more about reclaiming a sense of purpose, a way to rediscover who I was beyond the identity of a husband. As time passed, I found solace in the predictability of my daily routine. The small victories, the steady progress, were like reminders of the person I used to be before my life unraveled. Gradually, the effort began to pay off. Just last week I earned a promotion, a position I'd been quietly working toward for over a year but never thought I would reach. That achievement was more than a career milestone. It was validation, proof that I could still build something meaningful despite all I'd been through. News about Jenny occasionally reaches me through mutual friends. I've heard she's moved back in with her parents, which doesn't surprise me. They've always been her safety net, the place she turned to when life became too much to handle. Apparently, she's still unemployed, which makes it likely she's leaning on them more heavily than ever. I can't help but wonder if they've truly forgiven her for everything that happened, or if they're merely enduring her presence out of familial obligation. I wish I could say I felt bad for her, but I don't. For years during our marriage, I contorted myself into someone I barely recognized, constantly sacrificing my own needs to accommodate hers. I gave up pieces of myself to keep her satisfied, and yet, in the end, my efforts were met with betrayal and humiliation. Now, for the first time in what feels like forever, I'm reclaiming those parts of myself. The most significant change, however, lies in how I now see my future. Right after the divorce, I struggled to imagine a life without Jenny. It wasn't because I missed her. It was because so much of my identity had been shaped around being her partner. I wasn't sure who I was on my own, but that uncertainty is gone. My outlook has shifted, and now I see a future brimming with opportunities, a chance to make choices entirely for myself, without compromise or hesitation. I've started reconnecting with old friends, rediscovering hobbies I hadn't touched in years, and even entertaining the idea of traveling, something I never had the freedom or space for during our marriage. It's strange, almost surreal, but in the most liberating way. I'm beginning to envision a life shaped entirely by my own aspirations, free from the weight of someone else's constant expectations and demands. That's not to say the past doesn't resurface from time to time. Occasionally I think back to the happier moments and wonder how it all fell apart. But those reflections are fleeting. More often than not, I feel grateful that it ended when it did. As painful as it was, the divorce forced me to confront the truth about our relationship and take a step I should have taken long before that disastrous anniversary party. There's a certain irony in it all. One of Jenny's last-ditch attempts to win me back included a warning that I'd regret leaving her. She was so sure I'd look back one day and realize I'd walked away from the best thing I ever had. Yet, as I stand here now, I can't think of a single part of me that wants that life back. The person I was in that marriage feels like someone I no longer know, a version of myself I've outgrown. And for the first time in years, I feel anchored, as though I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. That doesn't mean everything is flawless. I know challenges will come, and doubt may occasionally creep in, making me question my choices and direction. But right now, my focus is on moving forward, on building a life that aligns with who I truly am, what I believe in, and what brings me genuine joy. And to me, that feels like the beginning of something truly worth anticipating. This concludes the story. If you like it, then put your powerful like and subscribe to the channel.